friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And yes, I know I sound pretty thrashed today, but never fear, I'm just fine. I'm just getting over a little cold that was brought on because we had some family that came over and they stayed with us for quite a few days. We stayed up late every night, which I'm the kind that goes to bed early, but no matter how late I stay up, I still wake up between 3:30 and 4:30 because my body says it's time to get up and get some work done. And was watching a sick grandbaby. So, you know, you compile all this stuff together, it's just going to happen. Doesn't matter how healthy you are, it can happen. It's life. So with that though, it reminded me of a few things I needed to get done, and one of them was getting some more elderberry tincture made. I had made an elderberry tincture. In fact, this picture you're going to see is old because it was the first one I made. It was before I started making the syrup. Because I use it in such small quantities, it's taken me years and years to work through it, and I finally got down the last little bit in my bottle. I do have a recipe for the elderberry syrup, which I was also using this time around. I do try to make at least every other year, make a big batch of it. I share it with family as they need it. Typically it's rare we ever need it, or if we feel something coming on, we might take it. Unfortunately, I didn't catch this soon enough. I didn't realize, I thought I was just not feeling great because I was tired until it really settled in. So I was using it this time around. I'm going to explain how. And, you know, the difference between the syrup and the tincture and the ways I use them, both can be quite effective. So I decided it was time I better get some more going. So that's what you'll see right here. And here's a picture of what it looked like when I first started it. You can still see through it a little bit. In this, instead of just using elderberries like I did in my original batch, which in this I probably put close to a cup of dried elderberries because I want it to be nice and strong. That's just the way I do things. I also added a single cinnamon stick, about 2 or 3 star anise, put in some dried organic ginger. I'm thinking maybe a heavy tablespoonful. I don't measure stuff, I just eyeball it. And then maybe about, I don't know, 10 or so cloves I threw in there. Oh, and I did throw in a couple of organic orange peel pieces that I had dehydrated up. So the amount you put into your tinctures is going to be entirely up to you. For the elderberries, you probably don't really need to put a whole cup into this, which is going to be over a quart. I don't know exactly. I keep forgetting to measure out how much this jar holds. It's a recycled green olive jar that I get from Costco, and I like using them for all kinds of things. But anyway, I just kind of throw stuff together. And then what I used to tincture this time around, the first time I used vodka because I was, you know, when I first started getting into tincture making, I thought, oh, you have to use vodka. Well, you can use any alcohol, really. The stronger the alcohol, typically the stronger your tincture is going to be and the less of it you're going to need. Some of that's also going to depend on the herb or berry or mushroom you're going to use. But really, even wine will work. I usually will use homemade wine for a lot of my extracts because I can pretty much make it for free out of whatever I grow, my grapes, apples, rhubarb, and more. But because I still had some tequila, which is not one of my favorites, but there was some that got left here from a carryover reception from when my youngest son got married, that ended up over here and they brought all that stuff over. So I'm still trying to use that stuff up in the form of making tinctures and whatnot. So I might have finally used up the last of that tequila, but that's mostly what's in here. And then I topped it off with some homemade wine to give it a little bit better flavor as well. But spiced rum, if flavor is really a concern, spiced rum is a really good one to use in my personal opinion, but you can stick with vodka because people can usually get that for cheaper than, like, especially spiced rum. But you can use regular rum, you can use whiskey. It doesn't have to be vodka. It can be whatever you just happen to have on hand. Let's talk a little bit about how I use this. as opposed to like the syrup, which has no alcohol in it, which I'll link to that video recipe down below. That one I'm going to take up to a shot of that at a time when I need it. Whereas the tincture, I'm only going to take a little tiny bit, like maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon tops. And what I really use it for most is for the throat, because the strong alcohol in the tincture will numb the throat, as well as the elderberry doing its work in there. So what I've done is I put it in a spray bottle like this. A spray bottle like this is going to be best if you're going to store it in there anyway, because it's glass, it's amber, and then you can just make a throat spray out of it. It's great because you're not only getting the healing benefits of the elderberry and whatever else you throw in there, you can actually spray it directly on your throat, and you just need 1 or 2 little quick sprays, and then it can really help, especially if you're trying to sleep and you got a cough or sore throat that's keeping you awake. Just spray that in there, and it should calm everything down enough for you to get some sleep. If you wake up in the middle of the night, keep the bottle next to you, spray it again. But you can also take it in like just a little small amounts at a time throughout the day as necessary, if you prefer a tincture over a syrup. I just like to do both depending on how I need to use it. And then some other things I've been doing is taking my honey infused garlic. I can't even remember what all I put in this one because I change it up every time, but it clearly has black seed in it, which is why the color is so dark, and red pepper flakes, because I can taste the heat in there. But one thing I found with the honey infused garlic is if you get really plugged up, take a spoonful of this. And when I take the garlic, some people pick the pieces out and eat them. I don't do that. I take a spoon, usually a teaspoon, but a well-rounded, where I've got at least a few pieces of garlic on there, plus the honey and whatever other things are in there. I've added my own homegrown dried horseradish into it before too. This one doesn't have it, but the nice thing about the horseradish is that also will help clear the sinuses. But even just the garlic and all this other stuff I have in here, that just immediately opens the sinuses up. It doesn't last for a very long time, but it does immediately open them up. And that was very helpful. So I was taking that about twice a day, a spoonful in the morning, a spoonful in the evening, plus making some herbal teas and whatnot, just everything that I could throw at it. But yeah, and you know how it is. You always sound worse when you're getting over it and feeling better anyway. So yeah, don't judge a book by its cover, and don't judge how sick a person is by the sound of their voice. And anyway, while I was at it, with the tincture making, I went ahead and started another tincture with mullein, because Patrick's had a lot of lung issues within the last couple of years. He thinks it's just kind of a lifetime, even though he wears respirators and when he's gluing up the chambers, when he's doing certain things, or sanding and all that kind of stuff. He still has a lifetime of exposure to things that he thinks is kind of taking a toll on his lungs. So I'm trying to get him to get in the habit of taking the mullein tincture on a daily basis. The last one I made was actually an oxy milk, because it was a 50-50 blend of homemade vinegar and raw honey. But in this case, I decided to make a tincture so I could also finish up using up that last set tequila that was in there. And then I did still top this off with a little bit of homemade wine, because it does help improve that flavor. But I cannot believe how dark it got in such a short period of time. But same thing here. I put the dried mullein in about that deep. So I like to make sure it's nice and strong. The stronger it is, the less you have to take. Now I wanted to talk a little bit more about yogurt making. So I had a video that came out last week. There was a few things I didn't think to cover in that, and then also some ideas I just wouldn't have thought to say. So if you're one that has an Instapot, I don't have one, so I'll never think to mention this. I'm just not even interested in having one. But a lot of people were saying that they do their yogurt in their Instapot. Now I'm assuming you can adjust the heat on that to get a specific setting and heat. I'm assuming if people are doing that. Now, when I bought my last slow cooker, even though I stopped using slow cookers years ago, I bought this one quite a number of years ago as well, because I thought that's what I needed to make yogurt. And I found I didn't like it at all. There was no way to determine, other than using a thermometer, just how hot it was getting. And so I I only used that one time because it did not work for me. And I was concerned it was just getting too hot, even at the lowest setting. So going with the wood stove method, like I mentioned, or using the dehydrator or the Kasori, where I can actually set the temperature at 110, that has been the best of method I've used yet. The other thing was people were asking about, and I know you can keep your milk raw for making yogurt, but there's reasons why it is recommended to bring that heat up to 180, which is one of the lowest heats you can get and still have it pasteurized without overheating it too much. And I don't keep it there for an extended period of time. I just take it up there and then immediately remove it from the heat and let it come down. And yes, you can. There was somebody that says she only heats hers to 112 and makes successful yogurt out of it. And I believe that. I always assumed you could. I thought about trying it for the heck of it, but I knew there were more reasons why you heated it up to that 180 degrees. And I thought I had remembered one of those was to make sure that you didn't have any bacteria that was going to compete with the bacteria in the yogurt itself. One of the things that can do is it can actually alter the flavor. You might not get as good of a flavor of yogurt if you have competing bacterias. And there are some other reasons too. Some of that helps to remove some of the water out of the milk so that it will thicken up even better. And some more interesting information that I happened to come across when I thought I'd look it up again, because I'm like, why was it again? Do I have it in my head right, remembered right? And I came across this link where this person laid out the several different reasons why you should heat it to 180 degrees. And it made a lot of sense. So what I'm going to do, if you're curious about that, is link to that in the description box down below, that link, so you can go read that blog. If heating it just to 112, and then adding your yogurt culture and doing it that way, it would be a lot faster. You don't have to wait for it to heat up and then wait for it to cool down again. And if you get really good results and you're happy with that, then keep doing that if you feel better about that. But another thing I wanted to touch on too is, just like with anything, I'm only sharing with you the way I do things, the way that works for me. There's lots of different ways to do it. Mary's Nest has her own way of doing things, and some people like following her. It doesn't make her way more right or better, or my way more right or better. It just means finding which method you prefer that works for you. Now, I heard her method is a little more simple. I don't find making yogurt the way I do it difficult, other than the waiting for the heat and then bringing it down. But I know it works. I know I end up with an excellent yogurt, and I love it. And I love that I can easily turn it into cream cheese, or even strain it out even harder and make a harder cheese. And I think I shared that I had, in one of my other this and that's, that I had done that, got it, and before it got too thick, I added in a little bit of liquid smoke, some garlic, and did I put red pepper flakes in there? Oh, so good. It made an excellent spread for whatever you wanted to use it in. So I love that. And so I'm probably going to be eventually trying more of that and seeing just how hard of a cheese I can make with the yogurt, because I do prefer that over milk kefir. Now, some people will use milk kefir to get a yogurt-like substance, which I've done that in the past. I have an old video out on milk kefir when I was using it quite a bit, but I got burnt out on it. And then you always got to keep something going to keep those milk grains, those milk kefir grains alive. Now, I do still have the grains, but I froze them. I'm assuming I can reactivate them, and maybe one of these days I'll try that just to see how well it works. But to me, milk kefir has a very unique taste that is different from yogurt. It tends to be far more tart, and it's just different. I like it sometimes, not all the time. I prefer yogurt. So that's all going to be a matter of taste. Then I wanted to come back to the skirts. So the last patchwork skirt remastered video that I did just came out last week. And so I've been getting questions, a lot of people not realizing, because those were remastered videos, that I'm not selling the skirts anymore. But one of the reasons I'm remastering those videos is to make the instructions more clear, to brighten the picture and the sound, so that, and to streamline it so people have the information they need to make their own. I also do have one more skirt related video that I remastered And that one is just the solid. It was the very first sewing video I did. And in that one, I was just making a solid skirt of an old sheet. I still have that skirt. I still wear it. It's lasted me for a long time. So you'll see that coming out soon, probably in another week or so, because I have one of Patrick's remastered videos coming out this Wednesday. Again, one of the reasons I'm getting these videos back out again is so that people can just follow my instructions and make their own, because they've always been out there. And even if you have very limited sewing skills, you can do this. And then along with that, I've had people asking me questions about, well, if they're going to make them, you know, they got people asking them to make them for them, you know, and they're wondering how much they should charge. Well, I can't tell you how much you should charge, and I'm not going to tell you how much I charged, because I was still not charging enough at the end. And if I was to ever start again, I would increase, especially with the cost of fabrics going up all the time and not always having access to recycled fabrics. I'd probably have to raise them up at least another 20 bucks by cost, especially for the patchwork, because those take the most amount of fabric and the most amount of labor. So you've got to decide, you got to base it on how much is it costing you for fabric, and the amount of yards you need is also going to depend on the of that fabric. Like if you're getting 108-inch wide fabric, you're going to need half the amount of yards as you would need if you're getting the standard 45-inch-ish fabric. So if you're getting that size, you're going to need like 7 yards to do a patchwork skirt. But if you're getting, you know, 108-inch wide, you might only need 3 to 4 yards. So that's going to also have say on what your total price is. But if it's something, no matter what it is you're making, aprons, skirts, whatever it is, what you need to do is come up with a standard price based on the most expensive fabrics you end up having to buy. You also have to consider, what's the cost of your thread? What's the cost of any elastic that you're putting in there, or the drawstring you're buying or making yourself? And that's just the materials. And once you put that together, the cost of those alone, you're going to realize it's pretty expensive just for that. Then to that, this is where people cheat themselves the most, is you got to figure out what your hourly rate needs to be. You need to be fair to yourself. I wasn't fair to myself in the beginning, and I was only making $1 to $2 per hour in the time I was putting into making those skirts and the aprons. And that's not being fair to myself. And now that my time is far more precious now than it was when I was doing that, I would definitely have to charge more, because I watch grandbabies pretty much 5 days a week now, and they're important to me. They're more important to me than making skirts for other people. And that's where my attention has to go. And if I had to break that up into making skirts for other people, I'm going to have to charge more. That's just all there is to it. So you got to consider all these things. So it's not up to me to decide that for you. You have to make it worth your time, or you're just giving it away. So all these things have to be weighed out. Be fair to yourself. Don't cheat yourself, because people will take advantage of you, and they will complain about the price. You need to remind them that you're not China Mart, that you're doing this from scratch. Let them know how much it costs just in fabric alone, and they may be a little bit shocked to realize that, gosh, it actually costs more than $20 to make a skirt like that. You darn well better bet. Oh, and then along with that, I'm getting questions again, because I saw a lot of the pictures that I put in there with the skirts with a lot of my hand crocheted sweaters. I went through the spurt where I was making tons of sweaters. I hardly ever wear them anymore. I love them, but I just hardly ever wear them. But anyway, none of those were my own designs. They were ones that I found online. Only one of those was actually a pattern I purchased from Etsy. I think it was years and years ago. But the rest of them I found for free. But what I did, since people started asking about those, is not all of them, but most of them I was able to find again, some of them from different sites than I originally found them. They were all free patterns. And so what I did was I compiled them into one post on Patreon that is free. to everyone. So I'm going to link to that post down below. By the way, all of my Patreon posts are free. I use Patreon for posting things, written things like that, where I can have them in one solid place so people can go to them. So I'll have written recipes, I'll have lists that go with things like the video that just published on Monday, and then the list of pattern links I was able to scrounge up and put together, along with photos of my completed sweaters so you can see what they look like done. But yeah, you can, if you crochet, you can go to that. Some of those are super simple, like the circular one. You start from the center back and you just work in a circle, and then you put in the sleeves. It's actually, that one's super easy and works up pretty fast. And that's one of my favorite sweaters, actually. So yeah, you'll find that link, and I was happy to gather that. It took me a while, but I was happy to gather those links and put them together. And just know that if you're ever looking for a free pattern for anything, this is what I was doing back then. I just look up free sweater patterns or free crochet sweater patterns. You can do the same thing with knit and whatever else. I would put in specifics when I was looking for patterns for something very, very specific. And even though I like to make up a lot of my own designs too, when it came to sweaters, I wanted real patterns to follow, because when I delved into that, it was a totally new thing, and I needed to have an idea how to put such things together before I started trying to design something of my own. And then the last thing I want to say before I close out this video is, don't forget your likes, your comments, your shares, letting the video play all the way through the end, even when I'm talking about stuff that you don't care about. Those things go a long way to helping the algorithms that will hopefully give my channel a boost on both platforms, both YouTube and Rumble, especially since this one specific platform keeps tamping me down. They've actually, because I publicly spoke out against an injustice they did against my channel, and it was a very hypocritical, lying injustice. And ever since I did that, they just really beat me down to the point where I'm actually now getting, my analytics are down to 1/3 of what they once were. That means I'm making 1/3 of the amount of income I was making back then, even though I'm putting in the same amount of work. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed my this and that for the week. And don't forget to check out any videos and other links I'll be putting in the description box down below. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.